All right, welcome back everyone to Jface Games. I am Jface, and we are here to talk about a game called Crown and Skull. If you are familiar with ICRPG or Index Card RPG, this is by the same designers. And right now they have a free player's guide, here's the free player's guide, and it takes you, it has about 74 pages of it, and it's all about the construction of your player and how you create them. And then there's a couple of monsters you can roll with. And so you can actually playtest this thing just with this. And what's nice about this is it shows you the rest of the table of contents. There's a ton of stuff in here. And I have no doubt, based on what we've seen from ICRPG, Viking Death Squad, Hard Suits, that this is going to be a really fun book to have in general, just to read, and just the artwork. I mean, look at that thing. So what did I think? What did I think about this game? I have not played it, and this is more of a let's get an overview. And so I have a write-up here that I did, and let's go through sort of the way I sort of break down, because I look at these games, this first video, which is like the teach, I really look at what are the core mechanics in this system, so I get a feel for what this game might be like. And to be honest, after going through these mechanics, I really like a lot of mechanics, but I'm not quite sure if I have a full grasp on what the feel, quote unquote, is actually going to be. So we'll see. Let's go ahead and let's get rolling through this. So we have the resolution mechanic, and this is a roll under game. This is a D20 roll under system. What that means is you're going to have skills and abilities, and you're trying to roll under the skill that you have. Now, that's not the only thing you're going to have. In essence, there was 3 different rolls that he kind of talked about. There might have been another one, but the main 3 rolls was there's a flat roll, which a flat roll in essence is going to be that the DM is going to decide what your target number is you have to roll under. You have a skill roll, which is you have a skill that designates a number that you're going to try and roll under. And then you have yes/no rolls, which are D6. 4 through 6 is a yes, 1 through 3 is a no. And those are really, I think, for atmospheric flavor, right? You're not using that to decide the fate of the world. That is the players in a bar, and he's like, hey, can I grab a bar stool where I'm at? Or they all been kicked over, and you're like, boop, yeah, there's a bar stool right there. That kind of thing, right? Or I'm going to grab a mead and knock someone with a full glass. Yep, guess what? You just got a 6. There's 2 of them there. Smash them, earmuff that guy. So that's the idea there, right? So those are the simple roll systems. Now, let's keep rolling. Let's go into character designing, all right? Are there ancestries? They call them lineages in this game. And the lineages are, you get some of your standards, but I love the naming. They name them a little differently. So you have your stout folk, which is kind of dwarfish. You have your proud folk, kind of halflingish. You get your humans, elves, and then frogkin. That was kind of interesting. The game itself, you can tell that they've been doing a lot of, it's a world that he and his table have designed, and it's flushed out. There's a lot going on in this world in terms of, I would say that 50% of this felt like trying to bring you into the world, right? Between the Northholds, the homelands, the deeds and renown, all this stuff, the lineage, all of these things, it makes you feel like you're building up to be heroes of this realm, and it's a rich realm in which you live in. And that's part of the character creation, is you're actually going to choose your hometown, and they have 3 of them with lots of cool flavor to them, meaning that, like, well, let's go pull it up. Let's not talk about it. Let's show don't tell, right? That's the whole idea that my English teachers used to try and press on me. So here you go. Here are the hometowns. So you have your hometown, a quick description, and then you have different things that exist in that hometown with, I believe, people that are even within some of these. I think some of these have different people within them. And so what's nice about that is that it makes you feel automatically like you are a part of that town. You can really flush out what your character maybe is like. Attributes, there are no attributes in this game, folks. That was really nice to see, actually. I was really excited about that. So there's no attributes. It's purely skill-based. And we're going to get to this sort of like juicy mechanic that was sort of added to this game that I thought was interesting. And it's a twist on health. And we'll get there in a second. So what about skills? There's a massive list of skills, 42 skills, and here's the list. You can always click on this, and it shows all the different things that exist. And so there's this massive list of skills, but what's neat about this is that you only choose 10 of them as a player. So there's a huge list of skills. You're going to choose 10 of them, and then those skills you're going to be good at or not good at, etc. depending on how much points you put into those. And then anything else, if you have to make a check and you don't have a skill for it, my assumption is the DM is just going to create some sort of flat roll mechanic where it's like, hey, this is what the DC is, try and roll into this, and you're just going to go for it, right? But what I loved about this is that if you saw my last video where I was kind of exploring in my own sort of game, I kind of was playing around with ChatGPT and we created this massive list of skills. And to me, it was like, well, damn, all these skills are really freaking flavorful and cool, but you're never going to put all this stuff on a character sheet. And so here they kind of solved that problem in a way, saying like, yeah, we love all these skills, so we're going to put them all in the game, but you just have to choose which ones you're actually going to end up putting on your character sheet. So I thought that was really neat in terms of how they were doing that. What else we got here? We have the classes. Classes in this game is also kind of interesting because it's in essence a point buy system. There are sort of like templates that they provide. I gotta really scroll down a little bit more here. They have templates they provide, which are sort of some of your standard tropes, right? So you have a soldier, you have an adventurer, you have a sage, you have a smith and a cleric and a hoodlum, right? So there's 6 templates they give you. And this is for quick build outs. If you already kind of know the flavor you want and you just want to, roll up that character super quick, well, guess what? Here's your flaw. Here's some core abilities. These are the skills you should probably take and how much skill you have in them base. And then here's some equipment. But what you'll see on here is that here it says equipment, choose 9 points worth, right? And then here, these numbers, well, we'll get into that in a second. But the idea is that you have these things called hero points, and you can use those hero points to buy everything, meaning that you can use hero points to buy your skills and level them up appropriately. You can use hero points to buy your equipment. You can use hero points to buy your core ability in the game, and your core ability is the next kind of main feature in this game, where it's in essence this power or ability that's going to give you the main flavor of how you interact. Like, to me, the core ability is more akin to the class you would think, like an archetypical class in like D&D or something like that. Like, that really comes from your core ability. That's how you're really sort of interacting mechanically at times with like attacking, those kind of things. And so you buy those, and then your flaw is if you take on a flaw, you get more hero points to spend, right? You get like, I think 5 hero points if you take on a flaw. And I don't know how many flaws you could take. You might be able to take on a bunch. Who knows? I didn't read that part. I must have skipped that part. So you have these 25 points that you're going to be spending in sort of buying your character out. And there's some really cool abilities in here. Let me skip down to the abilities real fast, because I think that since we're talking about it, I think they do a really cool job of this, where, once again, if you've played ICRPG, you have in essence this is like a full class, right? But it's one sentence. I think Easy D6 does a great job with this too, where it's like they really pack a lot into one sentence that gives a lot of flavor and changes your playstyle pretty dramatically. And so that's really interesting, right? I think that's a really well done. That's another thing that this, the Runehammer games system, all the games have done that I admire, because I get a little verbose and I like to pack on lots of features to kind of hammer home the playstyle that I think is what a class is trying to do. And so this is really cool to read these kind of things and get all this flavor in sort of one sentence, right? So that gets us to abilities, equipment and gear. So there's all sorts of charts down there for equipment and gear. You, in essence, are going to have, let's talk about one of the core mechanics in this game, right? Let's skip down to health, because this is important. So the way health works in this game, health and dying, is that you have something called attrition, okay? And your character sheet, if you look here, I got to scroll up a little bit more. There we go. This is your character sheet. Very, very basic, right? And in essence, what you're looking at here is that this is where you get to draw your portrait. This is going to be your defense. And then you're going to have 10 skills and 10 equipment slots. And then I'm guessing over here, and here's where you can take notes and flavor up your character as much as possible. Your backstory, your lineage, who's your father, who's your mother, that kind of stuff. Well, Health, you notice there's no hit points on here. The way health works is that you have 10 skills, 10 equipment, and whenever you get hit, whenever you take damage, you're going to check off one of these boxes. Okay, there are different things, they call it attrition. And here are the different types of attrition, right? You have a basic attrition, which means you're going to check off either an equipment or a skill you get to choose. A flesh means you're going to check off a skill. An equipment attrition, you're going to check off an equipment. A destroy attrition means you have to destroy one equipment and cross off a randomly selected skill. Oh. And then a brutal attrition, which is you're going to lose a D6 equipment and skills, some sort of combination. So what do these mean? Well, whenever you check one of those things off, you no longer have access to it. If it's equipment, you don't have it until you can repair it. And if it's a skill, you can't use that skill. You know, this is supposed to show the damage you're taking. Now, some people would automatically look at this and they would start to say, this is a death spiral. You know, does this create a death spiral? Maybe, but that's maybe what this game is going for. It's going for that very gritty, like, I am dying sort of feel to it. And I mean, that might be your playstyle. That's pretty cool. So that being said, if we go back up to equipment now, when you're looking at equipment, different armor is going to have different pluses to defense. So your defense, I believe, is 6 base, meaning that you don't, monsters don't attack in this game. You are defending, right? The DM doesn't roll at all. You are just defending attacks. So you're going to roll and you're going to try and get under your defense, which is base 6, which is not great. So you take on equipment, and different armor has different pluses to your defense. So you might have a helm and a breastplate and greaves or something, and each one of those might be +1, +4, +2, and then that ends up making your defense, which is maybe you get up to 12. Maybe you're lucky. Now, is it just, okay, everything is just I roll my skill and I got to get under it, and I got to roll my defense, I got to get under it, and that's it? No, the monsters have attack values. So a monster might have an attack value of +2, and what that means is that when you are rolling for your defense, you have to roll. So if my defense is a 10 and the monster has a +2 attack, I've got to roll my defense minus the attack value of the monster, and then I have to roll under that. So it is faster than I just made it sound, probably. But in essence, I'd have to roll an 8 or lower for that scenario. So hopefully I've got a defense of like 14, because then I can deal really well with those things. So the other thing with gear is going to be all your other equipment, your weapons, all those things that constitutes gear. Okay, weapons for the most part do different ranges of damage from D4 to D12, with D8, D10 seeming like it's the most prevalent. And when it comes to actual sort of hero points and like how does this all build into like my character creation, I think that you have 25 hero points to begin when you're doing your customization. No, that's not right. It's 50. I think you have 50 hero points total. And then let's look, we'll look at right here. 50 hero points. You have 50 hero points total. Here it is right here. And to give you an idea of what that means is that if you have a skill of 10 in something, guess what? That costs you 10 hero points. If you have a core abilities cost 15 hero points. Really good equipment is like 7 hero points in order to get armor, or a weapon that does like a D12, it might be like 7 hero points. Armor that does +4 is like 5. So you got to pick and choose, right? You got to pick and choose, and that's part of the that's probably part of the fun of it. Now the good thing is that when it comes to advancements, is that at the end of sessions, you're going to get hero points, right? And the hero points is the name of the game here in this game. So whenever you actually like level up, you're not leveling, you're just gaining more hero points, and you use those hero points to buy more stuff and to add to your skills and to buy more equipment. Now you might find, I don't know if you find, I think that it specifically said you're not finding magic items per se in the game. I'm sure that the DM could put that in there, but I think for the most part you're finding hero points that you're translating into some of these things, because you can create magic items. You can create magic spells, and the magic spell system is really cool too. Now, the other things that kind of come into this game is you have deeds and renown when you're leveling. So in essence, deeds are sort of like, I translated them as like quests, right? Whenever you have some sort of concrete, like you completed this mission or this thing, that's considered a deed, and with that deed comes a certain amount of renown, a certain amount of hero points. And then when you have a certain amount of renown, you then at this point in time are gaining like titles, and you're actually becoming more involved in the world, right? You're getting these effects from the world. And eventually, once you've gained plus 25 hero points from deeds and going out in the world, you have this crown or skull choice. And it's really cool because it really talks about, like, there's a book called The Power of Moments, and this book really talks about the power of this moment. Like, you really want to like ham this up as a GM to make it feel like you are being, presented in front of the king of the land, and there is a festival or there's a parade, and here come the heroes, and now you have this choice between, are you going to be a crown or a skull? And the king's going to present you with rings, and in essence, by becoming a crown you're sort of like a knight protector of the lands, and by going skull, it specifically says it's not going evil. It just means you're more almost like masterless, or like I thought of as like a ronin, like a samurai that doesn't have a lord, like a ronin in that sense. And there's all sorts of perks and new skills that open up and new equipment that open up depending on if you go crown or skull. And that's a choice of the group, not individual. It's not like you can be a crown and you can be a skull. I think that it was a choice of the group. So that gives you an idea of a lot of like the leveling. But let's get into the actual sort of like combat system. This is another sort of interesting, and this is the part to me that I really have to see what this looks like and kind of play it to get an idea of how this feels, right? Because this is interesting. So when it comes to initiative, there are 5 phases in the game, and there's literally this chart exists on your character sheet, and the DM's going to have something to this effect. I'm sure they're going to see. And this represents the 5 phases that happen in a round of combat. So it's not turns, and there's not initiative. It's this, there are 5 phases of combat, right? And it's not like 5 phases in terms of like prep and attack and move. No, there are 5 segments of time that occur in a round of combat. And you as a player select which phase you want to take your actions in, right? And so you might choose phase 1, I might choose phase 4. I think that we both can choose phase 1. It's like all of us could say we're all going in phase 1. That's how I read it. And what happens is you don't know when the monster's technically going, but the monsters might be going in anywhere from 1 to 3 phases, right? So if it's a big bad monster, that monster might go in 3 different phases. But those phases are, I believe, never back to back. It's like if someone's going 3 phases, they're going on 1, 3, and 5, right? So what the idea is, and the rules, what this sort of talks about is that it's supposed to speed up combat a lot because you don't have this when am I going sort of scenario. It's like, nope, it's your turn. It's phase 2. Who's in phase 2? All right, players go, then monsters go in phase 2. Phase 3, who's going? Boom, boom, boom. And it's supposed to speed up that sort of cognitive loads. Just go, 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 sort of move, move, move. The action economy then on your turn is that you have one thing that you're going to be able to do on that turn. And that one thing is either going to be move, perform an action, or perform a hurry. And so a move is like if you're actually making distance on your move. It's sort of like, are you actually moving more than 6 inches on the map? Are you moving, or are you just kind of like shifting around in place? If you're shifting around in place, who cares? Like, we're not going to constitute that as a full movement. But if you're actually making ground and changing where you are in the scene, that's a movement. That's your turn. If it's an action, this is now you're taking a skill check, you're casting a spell, you're attacking someone, boom, that's your action. And then there's a hurry, which is you can move and take an action, but what happens is you're giving the enemies +5 attack until you go again, I believe, in the next round, or until the end of that round, potentially. And that's devastating because, like we talked about, like if you've got a 12 armor class or 12 defense and a skeleton already has a +3 and now they're getting a +5 on top of that, because I assume they get an additional +5, so now you have to roll a 4 or lower to not get hit. That's brutal. But the flip side of that is that for players, they don't roll attacks. You are always hitting. You automatically hit, you just immediately roll your damage. Monsters just have a defensive score that is going to be subtracted, so they damage absorb, right? So it's like they have armor, and if you did 10 damage and the skeleton has 3 defense, guess what? You just did 7 damage, okay? So it's super fast. That should make it super quick. We already talked to the defensive mechanism, so what about other modifiers? You know, I want to actually do things. Well, you can get crits. Crits are 1s, and critical fails are 20s. But then they also have something called hero coins in this game. And these are small tokens that the GM's going to award to people. And in essence, you can turn these in at any point in time to get a reroll. You can get maximum damage. But what I thought was really cool is you can give them to other players. So you can freely sort of distribute them amongst you. You do something awesome. You do something to get a hero coin. And then your buddy's going and he is like, oh, we got to kill this thing. And you just give it to him. Hey, max damage. Max it out, buddy. I like that. I like any sort of additional flavor to get some teamwork going on. What else do we have? The other thing is we have rest mechanic. Rest mechanic is it's kind of brutal. You know, if you can rest, you get a D4 of your attributes, meaning equipment or skills back. That can be tough. You know, that's full resting, so hopefully you got some healing in the party of some sort. But that ends up being the majority of the game at this point. There's a magic system that I'm not going to go into the depth of here. It looked really fun. You're using hero points. There's some basic spells, and those basic spells, for the most part, it's like every basic spell is as a touch-based spell initially, but if you want to do more with it, you can level up that spell, spend hero points in it to make it go more ranged, to do other things, improve the damage, you know, etc., etc. So I like the craftiness of it, you know, the ability to craft things. But overall, I think this looks really solid, and I'm excited to see how this plays out. So that's my goal next is, how does this actually play? The only question I had in the game, in the rules, I'm going to skip down all the way to the monsters. And the question I had is that what was really cool about monster design is it was very much kind of like Dragonbane, in that here's a skeleton, and there are 3 tactics here, and you have a D6 that you can roll to find out what the skeleton's doing. Now, what it did say is that you can always just do this. Like, if you rolled a 6, but there's no one near you, then it's like, yeah, the monster's gonna stumble towards someone and do their thing. But I like this idea of tactics, because I liked that in Dragonbane with the monsters a ton, that you kind of rolled to see what the heck was happening, and so this is really cool. The only thing I didn't understand in these rules is that you have here, and someone explained to me, it'd be wonderful, but you have tactics. When their phase comes up, monsters do 1 to 3 actions called, there it is, I just solved it. So this tactics 1, it means that this goes in the first phase, right? Oh, no, this says phase 3. So, yeah, I do have this confusion here. So look at this. Phase, enemies take actions in 1 or more of the phases, up to 3 phases maximum. So I believe this is supposed to denote what phase they actually take their action in. I would assume this denotes when it's their action, how many of these tactics do they actually perform, right? So yeah, I would assume this is kind of brutal. This is interesting in the fact that here's this skeleton, and this skeleton goes on the 3rd phase of combat, and when they do, they have 1 tactic, meaning you roll a die, I would assume, a d6, to see which of these happens. This elite skeleton goes on phase 4 of combat, and when they do, they take, I assume that you roll 3 different times, so they're going to get 3 potential attacks, and if you roll 1, they get another target. If they roll 2 to 5, that's an attack, attack, attack. That's a lot of damage, right? Now, hopefully you're not running into a lot of elite skeletons, but that could be pretty brutal. So, anyways, that is Crown and Skull. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, leave some comments. Hopefully I didn't screw up any rules. And I'll talk to you guys soon. I'm going to be at Gen Con, so if you're there, say hi.